We've multiplied mixed numbers. Today we're going to talk about how to divide mixed numbers. So just as it is with multiplying, the first step, if necessary, is to rewrite each mixed number as an improper fraction. And here's some kind of cool news. The only difference between multiplying and dividing mixed numbers is step 2. Everything else is identical. So there's just one extra step, and it's not a hard or long step at all, but it's one you have to remember to get the answers right. So you flip the divisor, which that's the big math word for the second fraction. But honestly, whether you remember the word divisor is not super important, but you remembering that it's the second fraction that gets flipped and not the first is vitally important. So just to make sure you understand, like, the big words are dividend for the first one, divisor for the second one, and quotient's the answer. But the point is, you got to remember it's the second fraction you flip each time. Flipping a fraction, the result is also called the reciprocal. So a reciprocal would be like if 2/3 is what you start with, the reciprocal is 3/2. So it just means flipping the fraction upside down. And if you have a negative sign, it keeps the negative sign. It doesn't change the sign. Okay, the rest of the steps are identical to what we did in multiplying. Determine if there are cross products. They can be simplified. That must be done after you flip the second fraction. Do not try to cancel anything out before you flip. So this order really does matter. You flip, then look for cross products. Then you multiply the numerators, the numbers on top, multiply the numbers on the bottom, that's the denominators, and reduce if needed. There's a few exceptions, but most of the time, if you handle cross products correctly, you won't have to reduce. Okay, so step 1, we need to change these to mixed numbers. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 3 is 13. Another thing you can remember, math teachers and mathematicians will often say, to divide by a fraction, you have to multiply by its reciprocal. So that's us doing step 2 right there. Step 1 was converting them into improper fractions. Step 2 was flipping the second fraction, because the only way to divide by a fraction is to multiply by its reciprocal. Another way you can think of this if you want is let me try that again. Keep, flip, change. Or keep, change, flip. Wow, I'm doing this poorly. So let me write it down before I say it wrong again. You can remember this as keep, change, flip. Because you keep the first fraction just the way it is. You change the division to multiplying, and you flip the second fraction. Anyway, let's look at the cross products. 3 and 5, nothing we can cancel out. Neither is there anything with 10 and 13, so we just multiply the top numbers and get 50, the bottom numbers and get 39, and we're done. Okay, on number 2, 8 times 5 is 40, plus 2 is 42. And remember to apply that negative sign, it's easy for it to get lost. Divided by 4 times 7 is 28, plus 2 is 30. Now before I think about the cross products, I must do the flip first. So I must keep the first fraction the same, change the division sign to a multiplication sign, and flip the second fraction. Okay, we can't cancel anything out with 5 and 7, but 42 and 30 are both divisible by 6. So I divide 30 by 6 and get 5. Divide negative 42 by 6 and get negative 7. Negative 7 times 7 is negative 49. And 5 times 5 is 25. Number 3, you don't have to worry about step 1. That's why I made sure I put the words if necessary. These are both already improper fractions. So we can go straight to step 2, which is to anytime you need to divide by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. And you can put the negative sign wherever you want. If it makes more sense to you to put 3 over negative 14 and just keep the negative with the 14, that's completely fine. Doesn't matter whether the negative is on top or bottom. Okay, 2 and 3 can't cancel out, but 7 and 14 are both divisible by 7. So if I divide this by 7, I get 1. Divide this by 7, I get 2. So 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. And 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, on number 4, this first fraction is already just a fraction, no mixed number. This one we do have to convert. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So then we remember that we've got to flip the divisor, we've got to flip the second fraction, and change it to multiplication. 5 and 2 can't be canceled, but 3 and 9 are both divisible by 3. Divide negative 3 by 3, I get negative 1. Divide 9 by 3, I get 3. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, 5 is similar to 3. They're already in fraction form. They're not improper fractions, but there's no mixed numbers we have to convert. So we can go straight to flipping the second fraction. Okay, 5 and 10, we can cancel, we can reduce. They're both divisible by 5, so 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 3 is 3. And just like I said with the multiplying lesson, if you would prefer to write these as mixed numbers, as long as it's correct, I'm not going to count off, that's fine, but I'm not going to choose to write them as mixed numbers. It's fine, just leave them as improper fractions. Okay, number 6, we do have to convert these. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 3 is 35. 2 times 8 is 16, plus 5 is 21. Then we flip the second fraction so it becomes the reciprocal of what we started with. And one small note here, if you're asked, so there's some questions on your homework and maybe also on quizzes and tests, I can't remember, but I know there is on homework where it'll just ask what's the reciprocal. You can't find the reciprocal easily anyway when you're a mixed number. So if they give you 2 and 5/8, you can't just flip it and say 2 and 8/5. That's not the reciprocal. Convert it to an improper fraction first, then flip it to find the reciprocal. But back to this problem, we have a lot we can cancel out. 8 and 4 are both divisible by 4. Sorry, so that'd be 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 35 and 21 are divisible by 7. Just make sure it's clear, that's a 1. We divide this by 7, we get 5. Divide this by 7, we get 3. So now we can multiply 5 times 2, that's the tops, the numerators. 1 times 3, that's the denominators. We have our answer. Okay, I'm just going to do 7 and 8 on the back. We're not going to worry about the ones like 9 and 10. That's just advanced for people who are excited about this stuff. Okay, on 7, the first one, basic stuff, 1 times 7 is 7, plus 2 is 9. This, though, first time we've had this, is just a whole number. Change it to a fraction, so just put it over 1. Then we know we keep, change flip, so we keep change to multiplication, and flip. And there's nothing to cancel out in the cross product. 7 and 1, 9 and 5, nothing they have in common with each other except for the number 1, which doesn't really help. 9 times -1 is -9. 7 times 5 is 35. Okay, number 8. 3/5 is already in the form we need. 2 times 15 is 30, plus 6 is 36. So now we flip the divisor. Change it to multiplication. Because the only way to divide by a fraction is to multiply by its reciprocal. And again, we have a good bit of stuff we need to reduce. So 5 and 15 are both divisible by 5. 3 and 36 are both divisible by 3. So we get 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 12 is 12. And this is one of those exceptions. We truly did all we could have with the cross products. It's not that we missed something. But this is one of the exceptions where even though we did the cross products, there is still something to reduce at the end. And those are both divisible by 3, so we can change that to 1/4. Now, if you just want to remember there are exceptions, I need to double check. That's great. For those of you who want to know why this happened, it has to do with the way they gave us the problem in the beginning. If you look, 6 over 15 could have been reduced down to 2 over 5 at the beginning of the problem. That would have prevented us from having to do the extra reducing at the end, but it also meant we had to do some reducing at the beginning. So it's fine to do that, but if you don't care to look for it at the beginning, you can just wait for the end and look at it.